Hello, everyone. Welcome on into the Below the Noise podcast, a safe space for artists to talk their creative process while showcasing their work in a hybrid interview performance setting. Hosted by Alex Riddle, myself, Colin Cassard, we want to thank you for tuning in. Today, we welcome in Joshua Limanjaya Lim, a modular synthesist and producer residing in Portland, Oregon. Utilizing sample flips, glitchy beat repeats, and infectious melodies, he manages to craft an immensely unique sound. Whether he is performing ambient, hip-hop, or house music, the goal is to always get the people moving. His latest album, titled Untitled 2023, is out now on all streaming platforms. Thanks for coming in, sir.
Yeah, welcome. Yeah, no, thank you guys for having me.
Appreciate it. Yeah. That was a fantastic performance.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So the first song that you performed was called At Your Best, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I love the vibe of the song. And so I was just curious where your headspace was when you began making this.
Good question. Back in November, my friend Brian asked me to play a set for his birthday party.
Okay.
And it was going to be like a roller rink birthday party. And then at the time, I was getting more into clubbing and seeing DJs and just being out on dance floors in general. And so I wanted to do something dancier and upbeat because beforehand I'd been doing mostly like ambient, experimental kind of stuff. And so I wanted to, being inspired by seeing all the DJs at the clubs and on the dance floors and all that stuff, I wanted to go through the intellectual exercise of turning my modular into a DJ controller. And so I began that process. And then also at the time, this is November 2022, I had recently been divorced, actually. I used to be married.
Okay.
And then so post-divorce, listening to a lot of Frank Ocean, a lot of Endless, a lot of Blonde on repeat constantly. And then so I kind of, as an act of like reclaiming trauma, I wanted to take, what I was listening to, and essentially I wanted to make like a Frank Ocean DJ set. That was like the original intention.
Nice. And
so I began, throwing different Frank Ocean samples into the modular, trying things out. The birthday party ends up getting canceled. So that actually was kind of a blessing in disguise because then like it took away the deadline from it. And then it gave me more room to like explore this modular DJ sampling concept. And then that just kind of naturally blossomed into what ended up being the album. But then this song in particular, this was like the very first sample I tried to chop up. It's the intro track to Endless, which is Frank's doing a cover of an Isley Brothers song. And so I just took that, chopped it up, threw that in the modular, and like, it became what it is now. But yeah, it originated as like just a track for like a Frank Ocean DJ set that I was trying to do.
Sick. That's awesome. I love it. It took on a whole new life.
Yeah, exactly.
Super fun. Yeah, when you started playing that one and I heard the sort of like the heavy sample influence, I was like, all right, we're in for something different here. In terms of the performance, like watching, it's one thing to listen to it, like on Spotify or wherever, right? But it's another thing to watch it and be like, right, that is all coming out of the modular. Because, it's like with recorded music, you never really quite know what's coming from where, right?
Totally.
And having not had the chance to talk to you yet, it's cool to see that it's actually all here in the hardware.
Right, yeah. Well, it's funny because like this exact music like could have totally been produced in Ableton or whatever.
I don't know. It's different. Like, been different though,
Yeah, it's different, and also it's just like this just makes more sense to me. Like just doing it this way, like something about like the tangibility and just like plugging cables into the modular. It just like makes more sense for my brain, and I feel like I'm able to just like go to different places versus like using the DAW.
The tactile sense of it.
Yeah. Well, also, like maybe this is a tangent, but also like the DAW, what I find when you're making music on a computer, your options are infinite. And so like how the fuck are you supposed to make a decision? Like when you have
Not
infinite
easily.
options. Yeah. So I really like doing stuff within the modular because it's like, okay, what you have in this box, like that's all you have. And so that really just forces your hand to think creatively and to just problem solve and just figure it out. And so it's very limited, but because it's modular, it's also like infinite at the same time. but in terms of just like the initial choices you have to make, it's just way easier to get started, and it's way easier to just like have a creative direction, you know?
So how did you start producing with modular synthesizers? Like,
Yeah, good question. I started producing music when I want to say I was 15. And I was using, the DAW Reason.
Yep.
Yeah, I was using Reason. And Reason actually is kind of like a modular DAW. Like you hit tab and like it flips everything on its back, and you can see all the connections, and you can reroute inputs and outputs. And even like some of like the synth plugins in Reason like have control voltage, like just like a modular synth.
Yeah.
So that kind of introduced me to that concept. But then at a certain point, I got tired of just like using all like the soft synth sounds, and I wanted like a real instrument. So I ended up getting an Arturia Micro Brute as my first synthesizer. And that has like a little tiny semi-modular patch bay in the top right corner. And the moment I used that and like plugged one of the cables in, or out of one of the outputs into one of the inputs, and like immediately heard like this LFO, modulating the filter or whatever, it just like clicked in my brain. Like, this is how music is supposed to be made. Like, you're not supposed to be at a computer and a mouse. You're supposed to be plugging cables into things and like, so that was like a real game-changing moment. And then when I graduated high school, my uncle gave me some money as a graduation gift, and he was like, use this for food, use this for books, like you're gonna be a broke college student, like here's some like seed money to like help you survive. And I was like, nah, I'm gonna start a modular with this money instead. And I was living up in Seattle at the time, and there wasn't a synth shop in Seattle this was like 2014. So I actually drove down here to Portland to Control Voltage on Mississippi Ave. And took the money my uncle gave me, and I started my first modular. And I kept producing in the DAW and performing like with my laptop and Ableton and MIDI controllers. But all the while in the background, I was like learning modular. And so slowly over time, just I became more and more primarily modular until like that became my primary instrument, and production in a DAW just took a backseat. And it probably was like 2018 when I fully like abandoned the DAW and just started doing everything in modular.
Nice.
So go ahead.
Do you record into a DAW?
Yeah,
when you're tracking,
I do record in
stuff
Ableton.
like that.
Yeah. But like I'll record and maybe do like some light editing. But I don't mix in Ableton.
Okay.
Like I do all the mixing like in the modular.
So you just take a stereo out.
Yeah, I
into
just
Ableton.
stereo out into Ableton, and then just kind of hope for the best and just trust my ears in the moment.
Yeah.
And I'd mix it in the rack, and then just record stereo in Ableton, and then send it off to my mastering engineer.
Nice. Well, it sounds good.
Yeah, thank you. I like that exercise of just like mixing in the moment and just like figuring it out in the rack, because I think when you just like bring it into the DAW, at least for me, I just overthink it to death. It's just
That's
like,
the
let's
danger,
adjust
for
this
sure.
EQ perfectly. Let's get this panning just right. And it's just like, no, at a certain point, I just want to like call it done.
Yeah.
Just like call it good. Yeah. And so, and also just with like modular in general, the nature of it is very fickle, and everything is very temporary.
Right.
So you learn very quickly to accept mistakes.
Right. It's very performative.
Yeah. And so it's just like, okay, yeah, sure. Like maybe that hi-hat could have been a little quieter, or maybe that snare could have been filtered a little differently, whatever. Right. But it's just like, you kind of just like take it in stride. Yeah. Just like, fuck it, whatever.
So
So you were talking about building your synthesizers. I'm curious because this one looks like, there are clear sections in it. When someone is building a modular synth, is that you get to essentially like buy these little bays and then kind of assemble it together?
Yeah.
Is that how that
So
works?
the way it works is like, so you buy this empty case and there's different sizes, like different amount of rows. So like you obviously have that case over there is like twice the size of this one. Both of them have 2 rows, but you can get cases that are single row, 4 rows, whatever. So you buy the empty case, and then from there you buy each individual module, and each one serves a specific purpose. So like this guy right here is my mixer. This tiny guy is just a headphone output. That's all that is. And this guy is an oscillator, which like is the part of the synth that like actually makes the sound. This is a multi-effects unit. So you kind of just pick and choose different parts.
Yep.
And then you throw them in the case, and you essentially through that like are building like your own custom instrument that does like what you want it to do. Because like you're choosing each of the individual parts yourself. And then so like just as much as like the music is like an extension of yourself and your creativity, like like building the instrument is like a huge part of that too. That's part of why I like modular too. It's like no one else on the planet like has the same setup that I have. And so it feels like even more personal to me than, producing in a DAW or something.
Yeah. It is a unique extension of your musicianship.
Yeah. It only has the things that I want to be in there, and it only has like the feature set that I dictate, you know?
Yeah.
Well, my next question was going to be, besides setting creative limitations for yourself, like what are some of the benefits of modular synthesis? But I mean, that kind of answers that question because you can build your own instrument. I didn't realize that it was, that personable, that malleable. So to speak.
Yeah. It's highly customizable. It, again, it gives like those limited options, those very set parameters. And then also like just above all, it's like the tangibility of it too. It's like, it's one thing to like drag like a reverb plugin into a rack in Ableton. It's a whole different feeling to like physically plug a sound into a reverb. Like it's I don't know, it just hits different and it's just more satisfying. And then in terms of like the performance too, just like the ability to just have like physical knobs, like get in there, like feel free, like just get in there, just like fucking twist those knobs. It feels good. It feels good, and it's just very, very satisfying.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, this song, I noticed a lot of the textural components of it. How do you go about typically like adding that grittiness and that texture to a lot of your songs? Because I mean, in listening to Untitled 2023, I noticed that, I guess they just have like each song has a level of grittiness or I don't know any other word other than texture, than to say it. But, like a lot of pop music, for instance, as an example, you can listen to and notice just like the smooth quality of everything. And, I'm not saying that smooth or textured is better by any means, but I think that each one has its a good place. So I was curious, what do you typically do to like, I know for a lot of people producing on like the SP 404, they can add like the vinyl simulator sound, to add texture. But what are some of the ways that you can do that on the modulars?
Yeah, well, so talking about the album specifically, there's a few different things. I have in the rack a stereo filter module called the Blades from this company called Mutable Instruments. And that, for my money, is the best filter on the modular market. And part of it is it has this like wave folding distortion that just adds just like, if you dial it in right, it just adds just like the right amount of crush to everything. And so I have like the entire master going through that stereo filter. So on top of being able to do like those DJ filter sweeps that I do, it just adds that little bit of grittiness.
Nice.
And then also part of it too is the drum sampler that I use. It's called the Squid Sample from this company called ALM Busy Circuits. They're based out of the UK. And it's kind of like not like a lo-fi sampler necessarily, but it has like a bit of a shitty quality to it, like on purpose, where it's like the samples are like 12-bit and like So there's a little bit of just built-in grittiness with the drums, like if I use that sampler. And then part of it too is just my mastering engineer, my friend Braden up in Seattle, Braden Gillespie, really talented engineer. He does a lot of his mastering like with tapes. And so that adds just another little like layer of grit. So kind of all three of those things combined give that like rough quality. Well, and also too, like we were saying, like I don't like multi-track things. I just record the stereo wave file too. And then so I think that kind of helps too, because then you're not really able to like go in and like, okay, let me scoop out the right frequency so the kick drum can fit here.
You
like
get
it's
that
kind of
natural masking.
Yeah, exactly. So I think all those things in concert just kind of give that like gritty feeling. And I really like that gritty texture and that feeling because like the stuff is coming out of a real physical instrument. Like it's no different than just like the sound you get out of a guitar or whatever. And so having that lack of polish, I think just makes it feel more real to me.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool.
I love it. Well, let's go ahead and get into the second song here. This one's called Look at Us. Do you want to give it a little intro to the audience for that one?
Yeah. This is, I think, my favorite song that I've ever done.
Okay.
Ever.
Oh.
So in the process of building the album, I was finding samples, chopping samples, arranging them, making beats out of them. But then when it, and then I had to figure out some sort of track list, some sort of order. And so in that process and in the process of like choosing samples and making beats, even though the objective of the album was to make people dance and make people move, it also very naturally and organically just kind of became like narratively my divorce album.
Okay.
And we were talking earlier beforehand, you were talking about like you could feel like some sort of like emotional like journey through the album.
Yeah.
That's definitely part of why. And so this track, Look at Us, I feel like is like the crescendo of the album. And I mean the sample, the lyrics, that the loop is singing, I said that I was leaving, got my mind made up, no more compromises, things just got too tough. And like in the context of like a divorce, it's like it's pretty obvious you can hear, right? And so like I kind of like wrote that song like from like my ex-wife's perspective. Like this is like her feeling, these are her thoughts. Like this is kind of like the end of our relationship. But then again, like I take those lyrics and those like kind of like relationship ending devastation and I put it in like a house music context. And now it's super fucking fun.
Yeah.
And it's just like such a joy. And like when I play it at house shows, like people just go crazy. And I'm like jumping around, I'm dancing. Like I purposely like arrange that track in a way where like the performance, I don't have to do a whole lot. Like maybe you noticed like when I was performing it, like I was just doing a lot of just like sitting around, just like moving, but like just kind of letting things run. I kind of do that on purpose. So then when I play it at shows, I can kind of just like go crazy and like dance with people and just like.
You don't have to have your hands on the knobs the whole time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm kind of just jumping around with people, having a good time. And so that song to me, every time I hear it, every time I play it, it feels just so insanely cathartic because it's just like, it feels like, I don't know, just like reclaiming that like relationship trauma and just like reframing it into something that's like really joyful and really fun.
Awesome.
Fuck yeah. Well, let's get into it. This one's Look at Us.
You know that. What's the deal? Is this really real? Real, better prove it. Cause all that talk is just talk. Better show me what your actions are. Cause you can say you want it now. We ain't gotta take it further. Here for the moment. Down to make the best of it. I let you get a piece of me. Can't let you get the rest of it. I was destiny. Wishing you love. Now your heart is sweet. Wishing you would stay. I just wish you could find me.
Okay, so this one, as you were talking about a little bit earlier, seems like the emotional, apex of the album or the climax type of thing. I just really enjoy how when you're listening to the album, and I highly recommend listening to the full project on headphones, really getting the experience. But I really enjoy how, the tempo and kind of the fullness of each song kind of builds until you get to Look at Us, and it's like a party, but it's also like it's emotionally complex. And so I don't know, I just really enjoy this song. But I wanted to ask off of that, how do you typically assemble a track list for an album? Like,
good question.
One thing that I really enjoyed also is that as we were saying, that the emotional climax and apex, it like seemed very like in a movie sense, where it's like the pivotal moment of the movie to where you can appreciate the fact, and then there's a couple songs after it that like allow you to come down and kind of the resolution, so to speak. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That really does mean a lot.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question, like talking about like how do I assemble the track list. It's funny because like when I look at it now, the track list for me is a very clear narrative, like through just like the trajectory of my relationship, and just like everything that happened after. But when I was assembling the track list, it had nothing to do with the narrative. It had everything to do with the BPM and keys of the song. I just like was thinking very music theory minded and was like, okay, this song is in this related key and these songs share BPM. So I'll like make transitions that work and make it flow cohesively. So I had all these like loose songs and then I just rearranged them with those factors in mind, key and BPM. And then it just kind of so happened to turn out in this like narrative structure. So it was kind of an accident. I did not do it intentionally like at all.
That's cool. It's a happy accident.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I think it's just like, it's funny. I feel like I like operate a lot off of my intuition and then the meaning of things that kind of come afterwards.
Sure.
So I think like subconsciously I was just like trying to like get this out and like tell that narrative and tell that story. But it was not like intentional or like thought out in that way.
Yeah, I really like the sidechain compression that you have like with the kick and the vocals, to where it's like, as you were telling us what the vocal sample was actually saying, you know, in the last part, but when listening to the actual song, like that kick comes in and the vocals dip out a little bit, and so that's what
a little bit.
Well, so that like created in my head like where I wasn't like fully sure what some of the parts were saying, and I was like, obviously no more compromising. Like there's some of them that you can clearly pick out, but that kind of ambiguity in how it disappears and comes back, it like keeps wanting to like understand, and like, I don't know, it's got a replay quality to it. I really appreciate sidechain compression. And as I was telling you off camera, like when listening to this project and towards the start of it, it reminded me a little bit of Jai Paul. And Jai Paul, that was like one of his, you know, he didn't do anything necessarily very complex on his first record, but like there was just a lot of that sidechain compression that created this interesting vocal tonality.
Yeah.
And so I really
And I think it's worth pointing out for those who may not be familiar with the term sidechain compression. When you listen to the song, or if you listen back to it, you'll hear that every time the kick drum hits, the sample just really drops in volume and ducks out of the way. That interaction is called sidechain compression.
Well, do you
Quick
know,
note.
funny. Can we like get nerdy for a sec?
Yes, please. I was going to ask you how you accomplish that within your modular setup.
So
like,
there's actually
is it a compressor?
there's no compressor. In my rack
It's
at
just
all.
like a level ducking.
Essentially, yeah. So like I had it hooked up. So like the signal that is triggering the kick drum is also triggering an envelope, so an attack decay envelope. And then all of my sounds, like the samples and like the hi-hats and all that stuff, are going through a sub-mixer that before the master mixer in the modular. And all those levels are turned all the way up. And then through a process called attenuversion, I'm taking that envelope and flipping it negative. So essentially what that means is normally when that envelope hits another input, it would turn that input up.
Sure.
But because I flipped it negative, it's now turning it down. So then essentially, anytime the kick drum hits, there's this envelope hitting at the same time that's turning everything down. So there's no actual compression. It's all just amplitude modulation.
That's cool.
In the modular.
Yeah, I like that. So you're just using is that like a trigger symbol from it, or is it actual audio from the kick that's triggering
It's
that
the trigger.
change?
It's the trigger,
It's like
not the audio.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
That's
that's
cool.
So there's no audio compression or sidechaining happening. It's all just control voltage.
The beauty of modular, right,
Yeah.
is like that kick gives off an actual, impulse that you can send elsewhere and use to control all sorts of parameters. It's great.
It's really cool. It feels very real.
Do you use any sort of like, I don't know, either compressors or equalizers, things like that are sort of more mixing tools inside of your modular setup, or is all of that sort of tonality
Yeah.
from the creation of the sounds.
It's all tonality. I don't have any compressors, any EQs. The closest I have to EQs is like just my filters.
Sure.
And I mean, essentially that's all EQs are, just filters, right? And if you have a band pass, high pass, low pass filter with the resonance controls, you can mix enough, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like actually like you could do a solid mix just with obviously like the right levels, but then on top of that, just the right panning and just like high pass, low pass filters.
People don't realize that those like three things right there are really like at the heart of mixing
all
music.
you need.
It's like you should be able to get your mix pretty much all the way there through just levels and panning.
Exactly.
You know? And then some filtering. But
Exactly.
it's everything on top of that is just sauce. You know? But I think people do tend to sort of lose sight of that.
Totally.
So
Totally.
that's cool. It's a good way to approach it. I like it comes out sounding good. You know, it's like it's there, it's balanced. I was impressed for sure.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And like I'm sure like I don't know exactly what Braden, my mastering engineer, like does on the master chain. I'm sure there's some like mastering, EQing, and compression that's going on.
Yeah, naturally.
But
even listening to it, you know, here in the studio, straight off of the machine, you know, it's like, so, you know, you can hear what the raw signal's like. It's actually nice to be able to hear what it sounds like there versus
on the record.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a fun like A/B comparison. To dissect someone else's mastering.
Yeah, no, totally. I do wonder how different it is, because I did tell Braden like, hey, like I really like the way this sounds.
Sure.
So like do the mastering thing, but like I don't want to like lose the quality of like what I'm hearing.
I mean, ideally a mastering engineer should not be greatly changing the way that it sounds.
Yeah.
You know, that's not the job.
Right, totally. And yeah, I feel like Braden is like the only engineer that I've worked with personally that like really gets that. And like I feel like he just like really keeps the quality of my recordings. Yeah. But he just like makes them
I think a lot of
bump harder. I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like make the transition from mixing into mastering. Yeah. You know, it's like I definitely mixed before I really understood mastering as a job, and it's a really different mindset, and it's sometimes I think hard for people to leave the mixing mindset behind when they come to the mastering stage, because it's like, it's so not about changing the sound of the recording. It's like the mix is done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like you just have to accentuate that and commercialization and all of those sort of like nitty-gritty details to where it makes a huge difference, but it doesn't make a difference by changing the sound of it. Right. You know.
Well, even in just like the vernacular that like engineers and producers talk in, like we often say mixing and mastering, like in one string, like as if they're like the same thing, but like they're completely different processes.
Completely different processes, completely different disciplines. Yeah. You know, it took me a while to really be able to separate those mindsets.
Totally.
And totally. So, definitely get it. But yeah, it's especially with something like this, like you were saying, it's like the sounds, the textures, it's very intentional. And so it's not like you need it to sound different than how you created it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, I like how it sounds this way. And so it's like, just keep it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel that. So when I discovered you for the first time was obviously at Thirsty City, I want to say July.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Sounds right. You were talking a little bit before about how, you know, when this song came on, you specifically like wanted to really, you know, dance with the audience and like kind of act as like the emotional conduit for how the crowd should be feeling. And that was actually one of the things that I really appreciated about watching your performance was how much fun you were having performing it. You know, it's really easy for someone to get like wrapped up in like, all right, this is the technical aspect, you know, just like this comes here, this comes here. I think that one thing that a lot of beat makers can either underdo or overdo is their enjoyment of their own music. You know what I mean? And so I noticed that as, you know, the emotionality picked up and the BPM picked up throughout your set, you know, you were clearly like you were clearly enjoying it and knew where it was going to go. And so that was one of the reasons that I was like, oh, we got to get this guy on here. Cause it's like, you fucking crushed that set, you know, like you performed really, really well, but it seems like you have a thorough knowledge of what you're doing. And I think that, you know, maybe the modular synthesis forces you to have a thorough knowledge rather than, you know, if you were on a DAW, you know, you might not understand the nuances of what certain filters could do.
There's no presets here.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, and that's actually like part of like why I love modular too, is like, let's say if you're playing guitar, you don't need to know anything about like the science of how that sound is made. That doesn't super matter, but you need to know how to like technically move your fingers. You need to know how to navigate the fretboard, how to strum right. You know all these like technical things. And that never super jived with me. Like growing up playing instruments, I've never like feel like I've really mastered like a traditional instrument. But with modular, when it boils down, the playing of a modular is just pushing buttons and twisting knobs. It's not super technically complex, but it is a very knowledge-based instrument. So in order to like twist the right knobs or push the right buttons, you need to know exactly how these things are interacting and how the sound is being made. So yeah, it's very like knowledge-based versus like technical-based, which I like really, really fuck with. But I think too, like, once you have that knowledge, I think that does give me like the room to like breathe a little bit when I perform. Because I'm not super worried about like playing things the right way. It's just like I know what's happening here, and so like now I can relax a little bit.
Yeah.
And then also part of it too is just like honestly, I'm just like very confident in like how the album sounds and how it plays, and so it's just like when I just hear it on those big speakers, I just like get such a rush of joy. Like it's just so much fun, and just in general, just like performing live is just like my favorite shit ever. Like it's so fun. I mean, I'm the youngest of three, so like I love getting attention. It's like I love being on stage. And, you know, like I said, I was a musician growing up too. So it's like so many recitals and performances and all that stuff. And so, you know, I think from an early age, the performance muscle was really built into me. And so now to be able to do that in a context that like feels really authentic to me, and in a context of like, it's the music, like I'm not playing Bach here. I'm playing like dope shit that like I really believe in, you know? And I think that all of those things combined just like is what you're seeing on stage, you know? But I appreciate you saying that, because like it makes me really happy when people like comment that like they think that I'm having a great time, because like I am having a great time. Like, I'm having the best time of my life when I'm playing live. And so it means a lot for people to see that.
Yeah, like, you know, we were talking off camera a little bit earlier, but like, you know, I did a lot of rap shows once upon a time, and the like trying to have all those lyrics memorized is like one thing, but it's a whole nother thing. And you can really tell the difference between when a rapper is performing lyrics that he's simply memorized and lyrics that he actually knows the meaning of each one and like has really thought about what each line means. And so to me, you know, that was like the difference between seeing your set and seeing some other beat makers' sets. It seemed like you knew the intention behind each aspect of it. And so, you know, and I'm not saying that a rapper who doesn't necessarily like is rapping like a brand new song and is just rapping it and the cadence sounds good and the words sound good, it can still sound good, but like there is an extra level of oomph that gets added when the person performing it truly knows like the purpose of it, you know, and the purpose of every word. So
no, totally. Yeah. I think like just with the context of the album and like the situation in which it was made, like, yeah, I think just every time I play it on stage, it just feels like very cathartic to me. And it's just like, reframing everything in a joyful way. And so I think like, even if other people don't know the context, it's like, I know it, so it's making me happy, you know?
Yeah, totally. And that's infectious, contagious, you know?
Yeah. Got to find joy in the music that you create.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Well, the next song that we're going to, play for the audience here is Palm. And this one, what do you want to tell the audience about this one?
So this one is not off the album.
Okay.
The album is all very like hip hop house music. This is an ambient track. And the reason I chose to play it today is because like talking about the two songs off the record and talking about how like they're kind of joyful reclamations of past trauma. Those tracks are very much represent like where I am right now today, how I'm feeling now. Whereas Palm, I actually made like the morning after like my ex-wife and I had like the divorce conversation. We had that conversation on a Thursday. I was playing a gig in Seattle that very next day. And then so the next morning after Thursday, I like made that track. And so that's why I brought it to play today, because it's like, that's where I was. And the album is like where I am now. And so it's very cool for me to like kind of like reflect on that journey. Yeah, that's what I would say about Palm.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Here we go. Palm.
Beauty, la passion. Learn how to love yourself. La passion. Learn how to love yourself. Beauty, la passion. Learn how to love yourself. La passion. Learn how to love yourself. Beauty, la passion. Learn how to love yourself. Beauty, la passion. Learn how to love yourself. Beauty, la passion. Learn how to love yourself. La passion. Learn how to love yourself. Beauty, 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 la passion. Learn how to love yourself.
All right, so before we started recording this one, you mentioned that it was highly improvisational. I'm curious, when performing a song such as this, do you have a rough idea of where the song will go, or are you more likely to just allow the journey to unfold organically?
Yeah, I think just because I've played it a few times here and there, played it in a few live sets over the last year or so, there is this kind of just like pre-programmed in my head, like where I think it's going to go. Like, okay, I'll bring this sound in first, then I'll bring in this sound, and then I'll bring in that vocal sample. So there's like a loose structure, a loose direction. And then also because it's built off of pre-recorded samples that I made, there's never really a question of like harmonically or melodically where it's going to go. I kind of know what that's going to sound like. All the improvisation just comes through like how the samples are sequenced and how exactly like the effects are played. So whereas when I play the songs off the album, I have like pre-made drum patterns in my sequencer. But when I play this track, I have a completely empty sequence, And so I'm kind of just writing the rhythms in real time. So that's where a lot of the improv comes from. And then I'm using one of the samplers to like live loop and record and granulize the loop. And so there's a lot of improvisation there with like, what chunk of audio do I grab to loop? And then like, how am I manipulating that looped sample? And, with an ambient track, even though there is a BPM and there is a clock that's kind of keeping everything within a certain tempo, because there's no drums, it gives me more freedom to mess with like the timing on the delay, for example, because I don't have to worry about like, okay, how are those snare delays interacting with the hi-hat or like those kick drum delays, like making things too muddy. It doesn't really matter. It's all kind of ambient, so I can kind of let things wash out, and it's all going through big reverb anyways too. So yeah, there's a loose structure in my mind just because of like how I've played it before, but there's a lot of freedom to like mix things up and change things as I play it.
So now you mentioned earlier that you wrote this song a while ago. You've been playing it for a year, right? And then you were talking about how the samples that it's oriented around you sort of pre-recorded. Now, when you go about, say, preparing for something like coming in today, do you have a sort of general patching setup and then you're loading your sort of necessary sounds for a song? Or are you having to, patch specifically for the songs that you've chosen to play?
Yeah.
And then how do you record those patches?
Yeah, so it totally depends, right? So like the rig that I used to play the album, I have not changed that patch since November. I've had that thing patched up. And
is that for the purpose of going and playing shows?
Yeah.
Because you're going to promote that material?
Exactly. Because I want to be able to play the album live, promote it.
Yeah.
But it's nice because I built that patch in a way where, because it's all sample based, if I want to make new music, I don't necessarily need to unpatch it. I can just load, different loops into one of my samplers and then different drum samples in the other one.
Sort of some of it is general routing.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So like actually when I made Palm, I made that way before the album patch had existed.
Okay.
But because like I made Palm based off of synth samples that I recorded, I was able to just kind of load it into that existing infrastructure.
Because the album is very sample-centric.
Yeah, exactly.
Sort of happened to work in that environment.
Exactly.
That's
so
cool.
I was able to just like make those samples, make that piece of music work within that patch.
Right.
Whereas this rig is different. Because I've had that album rig patched up for almost a year at this point, I still need something to like explore new.
Right, you gotta write on something.
I gotta scratch that itch somehow, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where this guy comes in. And so for this one, every time I do a performance, I'm like kind of repatching it and doing new stuff. Now, like this rig has a sampler as well, and so sometimes I can just take the same samples and recontextualize them and do something different. But like the actual mechanics of the patch are gonna be different every time I play it.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Do you how many mobile racks do you have?
I just have these two.
Just these two.
Yeah.
So that's sort of your like for the material that you're recording, and this is all exploration.
Pretty much.
Aside from obviously you just came in and performed off of it.
Totally. More or less that is that's the
cool.
case. Because like when I had that one, that's my main rig. And at some point this year, it became clear to me that like, okay, this is gonna stay this way for a while,
right?
And then I got this like second smaller one, just like I said, so I can scratch that itch,
right? Yeah.
And so I just have these two, and yeah, they're really nice because they got their lids and they got the handles, so it's like very, very portable. I used to be a drummer and used to like drum in bands and all that stuff, and so I just got really sick of like having to bring 1 million pieces of gear to the gig. So nowadays I'm just like, I just want this. I don't even want effect pedals. I don't even want any other synthesizers. I just want this thing.
I can just
plug power, plug audio, and I'm fucking done. Like I'm tired.
There's a lot to be said for that, I mean, and I imagine if you wanted other, like you say, you have a mixer module, I imagine you would, if you so chose, could bring in other synthesizers from the outside or something? As, like,
Yeah,
audio
I
inputs?
could.
Or I saw like your other rack has MIDI inputs. Do you ever incorporate like MIDI controllers into your modular setup?
Nah.
Not at all.
Nah, like the only reason I have
Or external sequencers or drum machines or anything
never.
like that? Nope.
The only reason I have like other synths or other instruments in my studio is so I can record samples to then
Gotcha.
pull into the modular.
Cool.
But like,
Yeah.
I just don't want to. Here's the thing: modular is already so fickle by nature, and it's like as much as you are playing it and you're controlling it, you're also kind of just like cooperating with it. And so you kind of just like, you plug this thing in here, plug this thing in there, and then you kind of see what the machine spits back at you, and then you kind of respond. It's a bit of a call and response. It's a bit of a dance. It's more of a collaboration than like a solo production.
You're not forcing it to do something.
Yeah, exactly. And so because of that complexity and the nature of it, I don't like introducing other gear into that mix, because then that's just, you're just creating more variables, more things that can go wrong. And then again, I just like being easy. I just want to like bring the one thing to the gig and like call it good, you know?
I mean, I totally get it. It's like I have a studio full of instruments and I bring not a single one of them with me when I perform.
Yeah, because like, it's just shit goes wrong. And then also too, like going back to like why I'm able to have so much fun performing, because I don't feel like I need to worry about like the technical aspects.
Build in the redundancies, you know, and make sure.
Exactly. I feel like when I, you know, like not to like knock other synth musicians, obviously, like so many people are doing so many great things, but I think it's very easy to get lost in the sauce of like making sure things work and like making like kind of letting the stress of the technical aspects get in the way of like the music. And it's like, that just seems, for me, it's antithetical to like why we're doing this at all. So
I feel like at the end of the day, right, the performance is for the people listening to it. And you want to present your art in a way that you know is going to end up the way that you want it to be heard. Right. And so it's like, I don't have any problem with people exerting like a high degree of control. And it's like, if you plan it out and you make sure that you can take your hands off of it, and you get to have fun, right? And and you know that what's going to come out is the way you intend it to come out for the most part. You know? So.
But then also by, you know, just doing modular for so long, I've also just accepted, like, when things go wrong, okay, don't stress about it.
Sure.
If that went wrong,
it happened.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Just keep going. It's fine, you know?
It's the nature of the beast.
Exactly.
Yeah, like once again off camera, I was talking about being on stage and stuff like that. And when something goes wrong on stage and you're in a play, you know, the more you focus on the thing that went wrong, the more the crowd will notice it. But if you can just hit the ground running, so to speak, or you know, just continue and not skip a beat, then a lot of the times people won't notice, and so it's just it's in your mind. But it doesn't come out to the audience, you know?
Right.
And
so, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's an important aspect of performance, because it's like, you know, every now and then, you know, you see someone and they're like, all right, reset the whole thing, you know, like let's start the song over. And like, that'll bring an audience out of.
Takes me out of.
I'm not into that.
Yeah.
And like I was watching a Tiny Desk concert a little while ago, and you know, it was an artist that I highly enjoy listening to. And, you know, that happened where he just like, all right, like start the song over. And it's just like, okay, I get it. Needs to be perfect. But also at the same time, like that wasn't that big of a deal. What got messed up there, you know, you could have just continued and moved forward and like turned it into something special and something new, you know?
God, I used to play in a band with this singer who like, he would, you know, we'd count in a song, we'd start playing, we'd get like 30 seconds, 40 seconds into the song, and he just like something about it he might not feel, and be like, oh, hold it up.
Yeah.
And make the whole band stop, and everyone's like, you know, and he's like, all right, one more time. And then you can just see the audience is like,
it just like kills the vibe,
what the fuck, you know? And the band is like, there was nothing wrong with that, you know?
Yeah,
and
right,
like,
totally.
Yeah.
Well, I think like part of like, at least for myself, like part of the joy of making music on a modular is like that joy of exploration and discovery. And so it's like when like a mistake happens, it's like just new territory, and you just take that and just run with it.
Happy little accidents.
Yeah, exactly.
To quote Bob Ross, you know, I mean, that's the genius of him. It's just like, oh, you might have made a mistake with the paintbrush, and you know, the canvas is something that's not forgiving really in any way because you've made the mark and it's there. But at the same time, it's like the marks surrounding it can turn it into a something that you might not have expected at
Totally.
first. So
Exactly.
art is an interesting beast like that. So you were talking about you like to sample, like create your own samples and then work with them. Would you say that's something that you do more than finding samples from, other people's music? Or would you say it's like equal?
It's probably pretty yeah, it's probably pretty equal.
Yeah.
Probably pretty equal. I think it just depends on what I'm trying to do. Like if I'm doing like an ambient record, it's probably for me going to be easier to like make my own synth samples, write my own chords, make my own arpeggios, all that stuff. But then when it comes to like making beat stuff, I don't really want to focus on melodic or harmonic material. I want to focus more on like the rhythm of it and the drums and like making those sound right. And so like in those cases, then it's more fun to like grab like a loop from another song or,
It's a good
chop up a
starting
sample.
jumping off point.
Yeah,
Definitely.
exactly.
Do you have any instruments or specific things you enjoy sampling more than, others? Like,
Yeah, definitely. I have this thing from this company called Critter and Guitari. It's called the Organelle. It's like a little blue synth with these like wooden maple keys. It's really beautiful. But it is essentially a Linux computer, and people like program their own software and patches for it and just kind of load it onto the synth via a thumbstick.
Cool.
So because of that, I have so many different like synth sounds and effects and all these different things in it. And so that instrument itself is like endlessly, explorable. And yeah, that's the one I think I had the most fun sampling because I can just get the most out of it.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like open source synthesis.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It
an
reminds me
open
of like
source-
it's like the Max community, Max MSP.
No,
like
yeah.
Max for Live,
It's
right? It's
the
like
exact same thing.
It's like people just build the things and it's like for fun, or to use themselves and they just share it. There's so many things out there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a cool community. I imagine that it's probably similar.
Yeah, totally. But man, there is like nothing better than like throwing like a vinyl onto the record player and like hearing like an infectious loop and then like being able to like chop that up. Like there's something about that like is pretty unmatched feeling. I think I really love that exercise of like curation instead of creation. Because I think curation is in itself like a good creative exercise.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because modular is high, you're cooperating with the instrument. Like a lot of the time, like you're not creating, you're curating.
Right.
You're just like taking what the machine does and you're like reining it in and sculpting it a little bit. So yeah, I don't know. There's sampling off of like a record or sampling like a pre-existing song. Just it hits different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that idea that like, it's one of the reasons that I say that rap in like, say 2023 or now or in the last 10 years is better than rap in the late 80s and 90s. And a lot of people are like, excuse me, like that's the golden era. Like, what are you talking about? I'm being blasphemous for saying that. But for me, the reason that that rap is better now is in a similar vein of what you're talking about. Like the idea that like, say I'm like writing a song now, I can reference like something that Brenda's doing and like, it's immediately a reference to a Tupac song that has like its own lore to it. Right. And so that like, you can just kind of do that that type of thing where you take like a word and reference it and it means so much. And so even though you have your own sentence and your own narrative, you're referencing all these giant narratives. And so you can bring it together to create like a bigger piece.
Totally.
And so I feel like that's like why sampling another person's art is so beautiful, because you can take the entire narrative that person's built and all the emotionality, bring it in and then build on top of it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like part of why I think hip hop is the best genre of music. And I think it's kind of related to what you're saying, because a lot of it is built off of sampling previous material. As culture continues to progress, as music and other genres continues to innovate, those things will inevitably leak into hip hop. And then so hip hop is constantly innovating, constantly changing, constantly improving, because we're just moving in linear time. That's how it works, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the natural order of things, so to speak.
Yeah.
But we got to say thank you for coming in and performing.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. This has been a joy.
So fantastic. Really,
thank you.
so enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Tell the audience, the listening folk, where they can find you and support you.
Yeah, great question. Best place to find me and follow what I'm doing is Instagram. I hate Instagram, but also I fucking love Instagram.
Yeah.
You know,
I understand that
and
entirely.
also it's kind of like a necessary evil when you're an artist, right? But @_ Limanjaya is like the easiest place to find me. My newest album, Untitled 2023, is out pretty much on all streaming platforms. Bandcamp, if you want to buy it, it's probably the best place to buy it. But yeah, it's on Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, if you're weird like that, whatever. And then I don't know when this episode is going to be airing, but
A couple weeks from now.
Okay, great. My next show is November 19th. It's going to be like an ambient, like pole dancing sound bath.
Wow.
That's very cool. Where is that?
I wish I could tell you off the top of my head, but if you want to find out, just follow me on Instagram and the information will be there at some point. But November 19th, ambient pole dance sound bath.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm down.
I never heard those words together. I was like, wow, okay, I'm intrigued.
Very intrigued.
It's a very, very Portland sequence of words.
We'll see you there.
All right. So, well, thanks for tuning in to Below the Noise. Make sure you check out Limanjaya's music, and see you again soon.